guys, what's going on? It's Ultimus. More of our class previews, jumping into the Death Knight. One of my alts that I play, so I feel like I'm a little invested in this one. Although I will say that I'm going back and forth on whether I want to ditch my Death Knight for Legion and shoot for maybe trying to alt a Demon Hunter. I want to get a look for how Demon Hunters are going to play and what their feel is going to be, and I'll go from there. We'll decide what I want to do as a decision. I don't really necessarily want to play two hero classes. Death Knights are cool, but I go back and forth on feeling attached to my Death Knight, so we'll see what's going on. Another thing that I want to throw out there that came through some of the devs I follow and stuff on Twitter is that Death Knights are actually having all of their stances removed entirely for Legion. They're taking out Frost Presence, Unholy Presence, Blood Presence, so you're not going to need to swap around for all that. They just didn't like the gameplay style, stuff like that. So those are going to be completely gone. Which, yeah, it dumbs down the gameplay, but on the other end, I'm kind of okay with it because that's something that's kind of cool and unique about Warriors is stance dancing and swapping back and forth, though it's definitely not as prevalent as it was in Vanilla and BC, but it's still a thing, and if you've watched any Warrior streamers, YouTubers, anything like that, even if you've watched some of my Warrior PvP stuff, swapping to defensive stance can save you and win you games. It's just the bottom line. Flat line, 25% damage reduction, plus being able to spam shield absorb, it just works. You get results. So having that being something that's specific to Warriors that really doesn't cross over with Death Knights as well, I think might be kind of fun, but we'll see how that plays out. Overall, I guess it makes sense too, because I feel like it really doesn't make much sense for a Frost Death Knight to be in Blood or Unholy Presence or anything else of that nature, I suppose, as long as they're able to swap that out by giving Death Knights at least some way to mitigate a little bit more damage. I mean, all things considered right now, if you look at the way Frost Death Knights are and Unholy Death Knights are right now, they do a pretty good job of keeping themselves alive even without Blood Presence. More or less. So, I mean, you really don't see too many Death Knights in high-rated PvP anyways. There's like a couple, but they're not like the prevalent class and spec on the 3v3 boards. But all that aside, out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right in. We always want to reflect the Death Knight origin story and identity and how they play. The biggest area where we see room for improvement in their resource, or is their resource system. Runes are a very iconic resource, but their functionality has always been convoluted. In Legion, we're making runes more straightforward by removing their division in separation, Blood, Frost, and Holy types. Death Knights now have 6 unified runes to spend with a maximum of 3 recharging at any one time. So, basically, before we go any further, how it's going to work, no more Frost runes, no more Blood runes, no more Death runes, no more Unholy runes, just runes. 6 runes that you have, so that's going to give you a little more control and a little more choice over which spells you're going to work. And we'll get more into some of the core mechanics, of course, as we get farther down. I don't want to spoil too much or else there's really no point in going over this video. So, runes are gone, except for just the 6 baseline runes that you have. With this change, it's also important that we preserve the existing gameplay familiarity of Death Knights by making mostly minor changes to core ability functionality and cost. We don't want the rune change to create a situation where best Frost rotation is just obliterate, 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 obliterate. Finally, we're reducing ability overlap between specializations, giving each single disease with a unique trait and creating a talent tree that's largely populated with spec-specific talents to better distinguish them. So, again, to clarify that, as a Frost Death Knight, you're only going to have Frost Fever. As an Unholy Death Knight, it looks like you're only going to have whatever Unholy is going to have, and I'm imagining as Blood, you'll probably have Blood Plague or something along those lines. So they're baselining it, streamlining it, keeping it very exclusive to whatever your spec is, and then your talents and stuff as you level up are going to buff those and draw those out and accentuate them. For Blood, the most scumbag class you can play in 2v2 arenas, I swear, the amount of double Blood DK comps we've run into is just... Never mind. Sorry. In Undeath, some Death Knights find a special affinity for the blood and bone of the living. They carve into their enemies, sustaining themselves with deadly, sanguine strikes, while using the bloody, shattered remains of the dead to fortify their own defenses. That is some descriptive wording, my goodness. These crimson-soaked knights bend the very rules of mortality to control the front lines of the battlefield. For gameplay, the core abilities for Blood should be familiar, though we've touched them up by adding clarity to the specialization. Each core ability now better leverages that sinister command of Blood and Bone to feel your survivability. In particular, we've changed Death Strike to cost runic power instead of runes. The results in a more clear choice of resource expenditure. You can't lock yourself out of being able to heal if you spend a rune at the wrong time, and also gives the runic generation a bigger impact. So, I think what we're going to see from this, in the obvious one, is a little bit of a lowering of the ceiling of that skill cap between the good Death Knights and the okay Death Knights and the bad Death Knights, which I really can't say too much about because I'm really a bad Death Knight, so, you know, it's just an alt I play for fun. But I don't know if you've ever, and again, this is exclusively PvP. I don't really know of any PvE Death Knights that do very well, again, because I just don't necessarily follow the scene all that much. But if you've ever watched Mez play a Death Knight, that guy is a Death Knight god. There are few people that play a Death Knight as well and thought out and proficient as that guy. Mez is one of the best players, hands down, in World of Warcraft, and he's a dang good Death Knight for that. I would be terrified if he'd pick up a spec and class that actually got a little bit more of Blizzard's attention and had some more, I guess, more of a spot on the 3v3 ladders. Just throwing that out there. So what it looks like again, because again, before the good Death Knights, you'd see them, they would be able to time their runics, their runic charges, the runes, their runic power. They had all that down. They knew their resource system in and out. And, you know, obviously for guys like myself who just really don't ever play a Death Knight except for kicks and giggles, you know, we're like, oh crap, we're out of runes, now time to run. So there's going to be a little bit of a squish there, which, you know, always upsets people, I think. But for Death Knights, I think it might be good. Because everyone pretty much agreed that the resource system for Death Knights was, it was cool, but it lacked in execution. So maybe this will help solve that. Moving on. Instead of Rune Tap, we're positioning Bone Shield to be the primary complement to Death Strike for active defenses to better tie into the fantasy and provide more flexibility. Marrow Rend is a new attack which allows you to rotationally generate bone shields. To provide gameplay contention between runes of a single type, Blood Strike now generates additional runic power on top of the standard amount gained for spending a rune. Here's a basic look at the core defensive and offensive combat abilities for Blood Death Knights. Blood Strike is a 1-rune melee range instant. Instantly strike the enemy, causing moderate physical damage and infecting the victim with Blood Plague. Generates 10 bonus runic power. Blood Plague is a disease that deals minor shadow damage and heals the caster for 1% of their maximum health every 3 seconds for 30 seconds. So baseline, what you're going to see there for Blood Death Knights is more of an emphasis on that health absorb. So Blood Plague, as long as it's up on the target, is going to constantly, every 3 seconds for 30 seconds, heal you for 1% of your maximum health. So a constant life leech going, which is kind of a cool mechanic, and it makes sense for a Blood Death Knight. Really no other class does it really make sense for, as far as being constantly sustained as long as you can keep your disease up. But for Blood Death Knights, it works. Marrow Rend is a 2-rune ability, melee range instant, smash the target, dealing strong physical damage and generating 3 charges of Bone Shield. Bone Shield surrounds you with a barrier of whirling bones that reduces all damage you take by 25%. Each damaging attack consumes a charge, lasts for 30 seconds or until all charges are consumed. So I'm curious, because Bone Shield currently isn't active, it's a spell, you cast it, it goes up around you, swirling bones around, yay, good times. I wonder now if Bone Shield is going to be a passive that procs from stuff like Marrow Rend and things that give you bone charges. That's yet to be seen. As always with every single one of these videos, I suppose I should have said it from the very beginning. All of this is subject to change, and all of this is simply baseline stuff. God only knows what we have coming for us and waiting for us once we get into talents, abilities learned, etc., etc. You're just getting bare bones, rotational thoughts, and mentality behind the class. So don't think this is all your class of spec is going to be, so don't be too disappointed. Don't get your panties in a bunch. Mastery is your... Sorry, Death Strike. We missed one. 40 runic power, melee range, instant, focuses dark power into a strike that deals strong physical damage and heals you for 50% of all damage taken in the last 6 seconds. Minimum of 7% of maximum health. If you are below 35% health when this is cast, all runic power is consumed, increasing the potency of the healing effects. So if you're below 35% health, it's going to be a bigger heal for you. And I kind of like that mechanic on there. it seems kind of fun and different. We'll see how it plays out if it keeps, rather than just being a flat out, you deal damage, you get healed for a certain percentage of that damage. It's going to be healing you for 50% of all damage taken in the last 6 seconds. So whether that means the last 6 seconds before you cast Death Strike or the last 6 seconds after Death Strike is hit the target, maybe there's going to be a debuff. That I can't really tell based on the wording. But either way, it's kind of cool. You can, like, especially, again, just thinking for PvP or in PvE, of course, if you're getting ready for a big boss attack, just drop Death Strike down there. Or, of course, if it works the other way, Death Strike after that big attack hits you, and you're going to get yourself some nice healing going on there for yourself. Kind of cool. Mastery is Blood Shield. Each time you heal yourself with Death Strike, you gain 40% with Mastery from typical gear of the base amount healed as physical damage absorption shield. Also increases your attack power by 20% with Mastery from typical gear. So again, attack power bonus for tank specs. But so it's going to be heavily buffing your Death Strike. Death Strike is going to be, looks like, your main self heal. You're going to gain 40% additional of the base amount healed as physical damage absorption shield. So whatever you healed yourself, 40% of that is going to turn into an absorption shield around yourself, so you take less damage. Kind of cool. I'm okay with this in the sense of, I know Blizzard has said that they wanted to do less absorbs in the game, but I'm okay, like, if there's only a select few classes that get some absorbs. I'm cool with Holy Paladins getting absorbs taken away if things work out the way that they do. Maybe some higher rated or better Holy Paladins have a different opinion and a better opinion on that, but for someone who just kind of derps around on a Holy Paladin, I'm cool with that. But for Death Knights as well, just kind of that idea that being able to plan and think out your Death Strike hits, how that's going to work, stuff like that, that's yet to be seen, but it sounds like kind of a fun mechanic at least. Death and Decay is 1 rune, 30-yard range, instant, 30-second cooldown. Corrupts the ground. Where'd my sentence go? There it is. Corrupts the ground targeted by the Death Knight, causing moderate shadow damage over 10 seconds to targets within the area while you remain within the targeted area. Your Blood Strike will hit all nearby enemies. So that turns basically your Blood Strike into an AoE, which is kind of cool. So that's going to be kind of how Death Knights continue to hold up that AoE pressure, which is kind of nifty. I can get behind that. Because, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen to Gorfine's Grasp, things like that. I don't know how all that's going to work out, if that talent's going to stick around, all that stuff. So it's kind of cool that Death Knights still have a little bit of some AoE tanking ability. Whether that'll be effective, obviously that's yet to be seen, but there it is. To give you an idea of how some talents may build upon this core rotation, here's an example of a blood-specific talent. Bone Storm! If you remember that, that's from Icecrown Citadel. That's kind of cool that Blood Death Knights are getting that bad boy. 15 runic power per second, instant, 1 minute cooldown, a whirl of bone and gore batters nearby enemies 3 times per second to deal minor shadow damage, healing you for 1% of your maximum health per strike. So it's going to be one of those things almost like Breath of Sindragosa, where you're going to pool up your runic power and you're going to drop it into Bone Storm. Only a 1 minute cooldown, which is kind of nice. And for it's going to hit enemies around you 3 times per second. For every time it hits, you're going to get 1% of your health back. I really hope they nail the animation on this. I want to see like some ghoul body parts or things like that flying around, pieces of bone, all that kind of stuff. I just want it to be a bloody mess when it's just flying around the Blood Death Knight. I just think visually that'll just be very appealing, and I think that'll make the skill a little bit more exciting as well, for longevity and for the sake of just, again, aesthetics. Frost. Typically everybody's favorite go-to spec for Death Knights. I myself am an Unholy fan. Don't know why. I just kind of like Unholy. But Frost, here it is. Combining martial prowess with supernatural cold, Frost Death Knights leave their enemies chilled to the bone and broken of the will to fight. Unlike mages who learn to harness frost magic to great effect, these Death Knights are born of it. Rhyme and gripping their decaying hearts, these frozen undead warriors wield dual blades to strike with ferocity and inflict deathly cold upon anyone who would stand against them. So, right off the bat, remember that Frost Death Knights are no longer going to be wielding a two-hander, all dual wielding. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't change it up. This pretty much confirms more or less that you're not going to be able to combine your one-handers into two-handers like some people are hoping. And it is what it is. Frost dual wielding isn't really a bad idea either. It's kind of cool. Again, it allows some variety of gameplay, so you're not just a two-handed class. But if you don't like it, sorry. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm just reading this stuff to go over it together so we can talk about WoW because it's exciting. Gameplay. The mechanics of Frost Death Knight are quite solid, and we don't want to do too much to change that. Not sure how much I agree with that, but we're going to move on. You'll notice that the core combat abilities listed below are largely familiar. One small area we found room for improvement, however, is in Killing Machine's passive interaction with the core rotation. While the automatic critical strikes it provides feel good, it is often better to ignore its proc in favor of spending resources as fast as you can, as your damage output suffers if you wait for the different resources required for raising Obliterate and Frost Strike to become available. Killing Machine now only affects Obliterate, and making wise use of its effects should feel more meaningful. So no more Frost Strike, Obliterate choice in your Killing Machine procs, things like that. It's going to only affect Obliterate. Here's a basic look at the core combat abilities for the Frost Death Knight. Howling Blast is a 1-rune, 30-yard range instant. Blast a target with Frigid Wind, dealing minor frost damage to that target, and minor frost damage to all other enemies within 10 yards, infecting all targets with Frost Fever. Frost Fever is a disease that deals minor frost damage and has a chance to grant the Death Knight 5 runic power every 3 seconds for 30 seconds. So a little bit of RNG there, which is always hit and miss, but since it's an AoE, it's going to be hitting multiple targets more or less, or at least more than likely. It's going to be a little bit more effective, I would imagine, and things of that sort. Of course, just a nice way to help generate runic power, I suppose, is always good. Obliterate, 2 runes, melee range, instant, a brutal attack with both weapons that deals massive physical damage. Frost Strike is a 20 runic power, melee range, instant. Chill your weapons with icy power and quickly strike the enemy with both weapons, dealing massive frost damage, so both those work exactly the same. Nothing too much to say about those. If you've seen them now in WoD, you'll see them there. Rhyme, your passive, your Obliterate has a 45% chance to cause your next Howling Blast to consume no runes, generate no runic power, and deal 300% additional damage. So that's kind of gnarly again for Killing Machine, in the sense it only affects Obliterate. They're wanting to give... Oh, sorry, Rhyme. I'm all over the place right there. This is what I get for recording late again. So Rhyme is something that's going to have a chance to generate that extra runic power. Your next Howling Blast is going to get buffed gnarly. So again, you're wanting to rotate between Howling Blast, and it gives you a reason to want to use Obliterate. Because again, the Howling Blast with the additional 300% additional damage there with an AoE, that can get kind of gnarly. Especially, again, thinking PvP first, mass amount of pets, especially since we're coming up to some classes in Legion that are going to be heavy pet emphasis and summoning a lot of pets. So I'm thinking against Beast Mastery Hunters, against Demonology Warlocks, depending on what the talents and skill set looks like for Unholy, stuff like that. So you're going to get some pet classes that you're going to probably want to deal with some AoE damage. So being able to buff your Howling Blast might not be a bad thing. And again, it gives you a little bit of an incentive to hit people with that Obliterate. Killing Machine, now that we're caught up to where my brain thought we were, is a passive. Your auto attacks have a chance to make your next Obliterate automatically critical strike. So again, straightforward, exactly the same, except now it just only affects Obliterate. Not too much to say about that. Remorseless Winter is a 1-rune instant 30-second cooldown. Radiate Extreme Cold, dealing moderate frost damage to all enemies within 10 yards of you over 10 seconds. They removed Remorseless Winter, right? I've pretty much only played Unholy this entire expansion in WoD. I seem to recall them removing Remorseless Winter, and now it's back, which is kind of cool. I'm again a fan of them bringing back spells, especially some of the ones that people were really sad and upset that they got rid of in the first place. Warriors rejoice, we have Overpower back. And then Mastery is your Frozen Heart, increases all frost damage done by 40%. Just flat, again, 40% buff to all your frost damage. To give you an idea of how much or how some talents may build upon this core rotation, here's an example of a frost-specific talent. Glacial Advance is a 1-rune instant with a 12-second cooldown. Summon glacial spikes from the ground that advance forward, each dealing moderate frost damage to enemies near their eruption point. So think like almost like a blast wave kind of a thing, like not blast wave isn't the fire mage skill, but a blast wave like in front of you, kind of a cone thing, I would imagine. How slow it moves, who knows? It's kind of cool looking. I feel like looking at some of the classes overall, we're going to see a lot of these abilities in Legion where stuff is going to blast out from the ground and shoot forward and hit stuff in its way. So there's that. Kind of a cool ability for a Frost Death Knight, though. I can get behind it. It sounds cool. It sounds fun. Just taking a bunch of frost and just be like, all right, fine. Just there it is. So overall, again, as long as they can nail the aesthetic and the animation for it, I think this would be kind of a fun spell. But we'll look, obviously, and wait and see what else we got coming up for Frost Death Knights with their talents and abilities. Should be good. Now, on to what I am most curious about and most invested in, the Unholy Death Knight. The Unholy Death Knight. I don't know why I like Unholy so much, because I really don't like the slow-paced dot classes, and I really don't like pet classes either, but Unholy Death Knight just seems to appeal to me, and I seem to enjoy playing it, and I seem to do better at it than Frost, so whatever that's all about, who knows. While free from the Lich King's grasp, some Death Knights still embody the ever-corrupting nature of the Scourge Plague that once threatened to consume Azeroth. No matter their allegiance or cause, they remain defilers of life, and nowhere is their callousness more on display than when threatened. Inflictors of the most aggressive diseases, and masters of raising unhallowed minions from the ground, these Unholy Death Knights are vicious melee combatants capable of striking with the force of an undead legion and unleashing pestilence that would bring foes to ruin. If I can't spam swarm pets and ghouls on people, I'm going to be disappointed. Gameplay. Unholy is receiving a slightly more mechanical change than Blood and Frost to better realign with their unique identity. We want to ensure that Unholy continues to be the spec with the most active use of diseases. In this regard, we recognize that Festering Strike lost its luster over time and has developed a new mechanic to ensure the ability remains integral to the Unholy rotation. So we'll see what this looks like. Here's a basic look at the core combat abilities for Unholy Death Knights. Outbreak is a 1-rune, 30-yard range instant with a 6-second cooldown. Deals minor shadow damage and summons the target or surrounds the target in a miasma? Yeah. Masma? Whatever that word is. I don't even know. I'm not even going to guess with that one, I guess, anymore. That's ridiculous. Lasting for 6 seconds, that causes the target and all nearby enemies to be inflicted with virulent plague. Okay, that's a new disease. Cool. Now I gotta learn how to say this word because this is going to be core combat rotation, apparently. Virulent... here we go. We can't read. Oh, boy. Here we go. First grade reading skills on display again. Virulent Plague, a disease that deals moderate shadow damage every 3 seconds for 21 seconds. It erupts when the infected target dies, dealing moderate shadow damage split evenly between nearby enemies. The disease also has a 30% chance to erupt each time it does damage. So, if the target you have it on dies, it's going to erupt, deal some shadow damage, split between nearby enemies. But it also has a 30% chance to erupt each time it deals damage. So it's kind of an auto-spreading disease or auto-AoE thing. Whether or not that spreads the disease, that's yet to be seen. I can imagine them putting a talent in that would make it to where anytime it erupts, it's going to spread the disease. That just seems like an obvious talent choice for this, if it's not already baseline. But kind of cool, I guess. Festering Strike is a 2 runes melee range instant. Deals massive physical damage and inflicts the target with 1 to 3 festering wounds. Festering Wound is a pustule-ridden legion that may be burst by Scourge. That's disgusting! Dealing moderate shadow damage and generating 3 runic power. That's just gross. I mean, I'll slap that on some goblins. That's kind of cool, but just the visual I'm getting from that is disgusting. So, okay. So you're getting this thing that deals massive physical damage and infects the target from a range of 1 to 3 festering wounds. So it can be any number of those. And it is a debuff that may be burst by Scourge Strike. So you put these on the target and you can burst them with Scourge Strike, and it deals moderate shadow damage and generates 3 runic power. So you can put these bad boys up there however long they're going to last on the target, and then if you want you can burst them and generate some extra runic power and just do some ton of damage with Scourge Strike, it looks like. And Scourge Strike is a 1-rune melee range instant, an unholy strike that deals strong physical damage and strong shadow damage. Triggers a single stack of Festering Wound if it is present on the target. So, okay, so it's not going to trigger all of them at the same time. Looks like it's just going to trigger the one, which is nice, actually. That it's not going to blow up all of the Festering Wounds on the target. That you can, if you want to just blow up one, you can. If you want to blow up all 3 of them, I would imagine just spam it as long as you got the runes for it. So that's kind of cool. A little bit more control over your gameplay style and how you want to look at that. But I'm liking that Unholy still, out of all the Death Knights, seems to have the most debuffs and dots that it's going to put up on the target. So you can kind of slowly rot them away. It's like the happy medium between my love for warriors and my dream to actually wish I could be good at an Affliction Warlock, but knowing it'll never happen. Death Coil. 30 runic power, 40-yard range, instant, fires a blast of unholy energy at the target, causing strong shadow damage to an enemy and restoring 10 energy to your ghoul. That's kind of cool. Basically functions the same way though as it does now on live in Warlords of Draenor. Sudden Doom is a passive. Your auto attacks have a chance to make your next Death Coil cost no runic power. It's kind of nice, important. Dark Transformation, instant 1 minute cooldown, transforms your ghoul into a powerful undead monstrosity for 20 seconds. The ghoul's abilities are empowered and take on new functions while the transformation is active, so same exact thing. And then looks like Blood and Unholy are going to be the only Death Knights with Death and Decay. 1 rune, 30-yard range, instant 30-second cooldown, corrupts the ground targeted by the Death Knight, causing moderate shadow damage over 10 seconds to targets within the area. While you remain within the targeted area, your Scourge Strike will hit all nearby enemies. So basically same functionality as Blood, just with a different attack. Alright, makes sense. Mastery is the Dreadblade. Increases all shadow damage done by 50% with Mastery from typical gear. So again, pretty standard for most classes at this point. Just a flat damage buff overall. To at least a specific point of your damage. I shouldn't say overall, but to a specific portion of your damage. To give you an idea of how some talents may build upon this core rotation, here's an example of an Unholy specific talent. All will serve. Passive. Your Raise Dead spell summons an additional skeletal minion and its cooldown is removed. Oh. Okay. So we get at least 2 pets out at the time. It's kind of cool. And there's no cooldown on it, which is nice. So overall, I think this is really, Unholy's life is really going to be dependent on the talents, and I know that's very obvious and like a no-dir statement, and we're seeing that with a lot of these classes, but the overall life and quality of life in the spec and how much damage it can do and how effective it's going to be in PvP is definitely going to be determined by the talents, and of course that's how much fun it's going to be determined too. As an Unholy Death Knight, I want to be able to throw out a ton of diseases, I want to spread them around, and don't take that out of context, internet. And I want to summon a ton of pets. I really do. I just want to be able to summon a mass amount of undead minions to just swarm my target. That was the way they've always presented Unholy. That's the way I want Unholy to function. And so hopefully as we get closer to Legion Beta, we'll get some more information on this. And as always, I'll be keeping my eyes and ears open on Twitter, on Wowhead, on MMO Champion for all the upcoming news and things of that sort, so I can keep you guys in the loop as much as possible. But that is going to do it for this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you play a Death Knight or you're interested in Death Knights, let me know what you think of the changes upcoming. Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you frustrated? Do you just not care? Do you think Blizzard should just remove Death Knights altogether, even though we know that will never happen? But go ahead and hit this video with a like, a comment if you enjoyed it, and a share. That always does help. I would greatly appreciate it. But I think it's, gonna wrap it up. I'm done talking, so I'm gonna draw this one to a close. So thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you next time.